We're going to pick up on 173, just a couple things to keep in mind. Soaphead Church is a pervert. He's a pedophile. His beliefs are that he's a good person. He has a reputation for granting people's wishes. And his name comes from part of it, his tight curly hair, and the church part probably from his failed past as a preacher. So as we read 173 to 176, annotate for the general plot and characterization. Picking up right here. Soaphead was reflecting once again on these thoughts one late hot afternoon when he heard a tap on his door. Opening it, he saw a little girl, quite unknown to him. She was about 12 or so, he thought, and seemed to him pitifully unattractive. When he asked her what she wanted, she did not answer, but held out to him one of his cards advertising his gifts and services. If you are overcome with trouble and conditions that are not natural, I can remove them. Overcome spells, bad luck, and evil influences. Remember, I am a true spiritualist and psychic reader, born with power, and I will help you. Satisfaction in one visit. During many years of practice, I have brought together many in marriage and reunited many who were separated. If you are unhappy, discouraged, or in distress, I can help you. Does bad luck seem to follow you? Has the one you love changed? I can tell you why. I will tell you who your enemies and friends are, and if the one you love is true or false. If you are sick, I can show you the way to health. I locate lost and stolen articles. Satisfaction guaranteed. Soaphead Church told her to come in. What can I do for you, my child? She stood there, her hands folded across her stomach, a little protruding pot of tummy. Maybe you can do it for me. Do what for you? I can't go to school no more, and I thought maybe you could help me. Help you how? Tell me. Don't be frightened. My eyes. What about your eyes? I want them blue. Soaphead pursed his lips and let his tongue stroke a gold inlay. He thought it was at once the most fantastic and the most logical petition he had ever received. Here was an ugly little girl asking for beauty. A surge of love and understanding swept through him, but was quickly replaced by anger. Anger that he was powerless to help her. Of all the wishes people had brought him, money, love, revenge, this seemed to him the most poignant and the one most deserving of fulfillment. A little black girl who wanted to rise up out of the pit of her blackness and see the world with blue eyes. His outrage grew and felt like power. For the first time, he honestly wished he could work miracles. Never before had he really wanted the true and holy power, only the power to make others believe he had it. It seemed so sad, so frivolous, that mere mortality, not judgment, kept him from it. Or did it? With a trembling hand, he made the sign of the cross over her. His flesh crawled. In that hot, dim little room of worn things, he was chilled. I can do nothing for you, my child. I am not a magician. I work only through the Lord. He sometimes uses me to help people. All I can do is offer myself to him as the instrument through which he works. If he wants your wish granted, he will do it. Soaphead walked to the window, his back to the girl. His mind raced, stumbled, and raced again. How to frame the next sentence. How to hang on to the feeling of power. His eyes fell on old Bob, sleeping on the porch. Bob is an old dog. We must make some offering, that is, some contact with nature. Perhaps some simple creature might be the vehicle through which he will speak. Let us see. He knelt down at the window and moved his lips. After what seemed a suitable length of time, he rose and went to the ice box that stood near the other window. From it he removed a small packet wrapped in pinkish butcher paper. From a shelf he took a small brown bottle and sprinkled some of its contents on the substance inside the paper. He put the packet, partly opened, on the table. Take this food and give it to the creature sleeping on the porch. Make sure he eats it, and mark well how he behaves. If nothing happens, you will know that God has refused you. If the animal behaves strangely, your wish will be granted on the day following this one. The girl picked up the packet. The odor of the dark, sticky meat made her want to vomit. She put a hand on her stomach. Courage, courage, my child. These things are not granted to faint hearts. She nodded and swallowed visibly, holding down the vomit. Soaphead opened the door, and she stepped over the threshold. "Goodbye, God bless," he said, and quickly shut the door. At the window he stood watching her, his eyebrows pulled together into waves of compassion, his tongue fondling the worn gold on his upper jaw. He saw the girl bending down to the sleeping dog, who at her touch opened one liquid eye, matted in the corners with what looked like green glue. She reached out and touched the dog's head, stroking him gently. She placed the meat on the floor of the porch, near his nose. The odor roused him. He lifted his head and got up to smell it better. He ate in 3 or 4 gulps. The girl stroked his head again, and the dog looked up at her with soft triangle eyes. Suddenly he coughed, the cough of a phlegmy old man, and got to his feet. The girl jumped. The dog gagged, his mouth chomping the air, and promptly fell down. He tried to raise himself, could not, tried again, and half fell down the steps. Choking, stumbling, he moved like a broken toy around the yard. The girl's mouth was open, a little petal of tongue showing. She made a wild, pointless gesture with one hand and then covered her mouth with both hands. She was trying not to vomit. The dog fell again, a spasm jerking his body. Then he was quiet. The girl's hands covering her mouth, she backed away a few feet, then turned, ran out of the yard, and down the walk. Soaphead Church went to the table. He sat down with folded hands, balancing his forehead on the balls of his thumbs. Then he rose and went to a tiny night table with a drawer from which he took paper and a fountain pen. A bottle of ink was on the same shelf that held the poison. With these things he sat again at the table, slowly, carefully, relishing his penmanship. He wrote the following letter. At this point, you're going to pause, take down your annotations, and the next part is where we read Soaphead's letter to God. To he who greatly ennobled human nature by creating it. Dear God, the purpose of this letter is to familiarize you with the facts which either have escaped your notice or which you have chosen to ignore. Once upon a time I lived greenly and youngish on one of your islands, an island of the archipelago, in the South Atlantic between North and South America, enclosing the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico, divided by the Greater Antilles, the Lesser Antilles, and the Bahama Islands. Not the Windward or Leeward Island colonies, mark you, but within, of course, the greater of the 2 Antilles. While the precision of my prose may be at times laborious, it is necessary that I identify myself to you clearly. Now, we in this colony took as our own the most dramatic, the most obvious of our white masters' characteristics, which were, of course, their worst. In retaining the identity of our race, we held fast to those characteristics most gratifying to sustain and least troublesome to maintain. Consequently, we were not royal but snobbish, not aristocratic but class-conscious. We believed authority was cruelty to our inferiors, and education was being at school. We mistook violence for passion, indolence for leisure, and thought recklessness was freedom. We raised our children and reared our crops. We let infants grow and property develop. Our manhood was defined by acquisitions, our womanhood by acquiescence, and the smell of your fruit and the labor of your days were abhorred. This morning, before the little black girl came, I cried for Velma. Oh, not aloud. There is no wind to carry, bear, or even refuse to bear a sound so heavy with regret. But in my silent, own lone way, I cried for Velma. You need to know about Velma to understand what I did today. She, Velma, left me the way people leave a hotel room. A hotel room is a place to be when you are doing something else. Of itself, it is of no consequence to one's major scheme. A hotel room is convenient, but its convenience is limited to the time you need it while you are in that particular town on that particular business. You hope it is comfortable, but prefer rather that it be anonymous. It is not, after all, where you live. When you no longer need it, you pay a little something for its use. Say, "Thank you, sir," and when your business in that town is over, you go away from that room. Does anybody regret leaving a hotel room? Does anybody who has a home, a real home, somewhere, want to stay there? Does anybody look back with affection or even disgust at a hotel room when they leave it? You can only love or despise whatever living was done in that room. But the room itself? But you take a souvenir. Not to remember the room, to remember rather the time and the place of your business, your adventure. What can anyone feel for a hotel room? One doesn't any more feel for a hotel room than one expects a hotel room to feel for its occupant. That heavenly Father was how she left me, or rather, she never left me, because she never was ever there. You remember, do you, how and of what we are made? Let me tell you about the little breasts of little girls. I apologize for the inappropriateness. Is that it? The imbalance of loving them at awkward times of day and in awkward places, and the tastelessness of loving those which belong to members of my family. Do I have to apologize for loving strangers? But you too are amiss here, Lord. Why did you allow it to happen? How is it I could lift my eyes from the contemplation of your body and fall deeply into the contemplation of theirs? The buds on some of these saplings. They were mean, you know, mean and tender. Mean little buds resisting the touch, springing like rubber, but aggressive. Daring me to touch, commanding me to touch. Not a bit shy, as you'd suppose. They stuck out at me, oh yes, at me. Slender-chested, finger-chested lassies. Have you ever seen them, Lord? I mean, really seen them. One could not see them and not love them. You who made them must have considered them lovely, even as an idea. How much more lovely is the manifestation of that idea? I couldn't, as you must recall, keep my mouth off them. Salt sweet, like not quite ripe strawberries covered with the light salt sweat of running days and hopping, skipping, jumping hours. The love of them, the touch, taste, and feel of them was not just an easy, luxurious human vice. They were, for me, a thing to do instead. Instead of Papa, instead of the cloth, instead of Velma, and I chose not to do without them. But I didn't go into the church. At least, I didn't do that. As to what I did do, I told people I knew all about you, that I had received your powers. It was not a complete lie, but it was a complete lie. I should never have, I admit. I should never have taken their money in exchange for well-phrased, well-placed, well-faced lies. But mark you, I hated it. Not for a moment did I love the lies or the money. But consider, the woman who left the hotel room. Consider, the green time, the noon time of the archipelago. Consider, their hopeful eyes that were outdone only by their hoping breasts. Consider, how I needed a comfortable evil to prevent my knowing what I could not bear to know. Consider, how I hated and despised money. And now, consider, not according to my just deserts, but according to my mercy, the little black girl that came allooning at me today. Tell me, Lord, how could you leave a lass so long, so lone, that she could find her way to me? How could you? I weep for you, Lord, and it is because I weep for you that I had to do your work for you. Do you know what she came for? Blue eyes. New blue eyes, she said, like she was buying shoes. I'd like a pair of new blue eyes. She must have asked you for them a very long time, and you hadn't replied. A habit, I could have told her, a long ago habit broken for job, but no more. She came to me for them. She added one of my cards enclosed. By the way, I added the Micah, the Elihu Micah Whitcomb, but I am called Soaphead Church. I cannot remember how or why I got the name. What makes one name more a person than another? Is the name the real thing, then, and the person only what his name says? Is that why? To the simplest and friendliest of questions, what is your name? Put to you by Moses, you would not say, and instead, I am who I am. Like Popeye? I am what I am. Afraid you were, weren't you, to give out your name? Afraid they would know the name and then know you. And then you wouldn't fear you. It's quite all right, don't be vexed. I mean no offense. I understand I have been a bad man too, and an unhappy man too. But someday I will die. I was always so kind. Why do I have to die? The little girls are the only things I'll miss. Do you know that when I touched their sturdy little tits and bit them just a little, I felt I was being friendly. I didn't want to kiss their mouths or sleep in the bed with them or take a child bride for my own. Playful I felt and friendly, not like the newspaper said, not like the people whispered. And they didn't mind at all, not at all. Remember how so many of them came back? No one would even try to understand that. If I'd been hurting them, would they have come back? 2 of them, Doreen and Sugar Babe, they'd come together. I gave them mince money and they'd eat ice cream with their legs open while I played with them. It was like a party. and there wasn't nastiness, and there wasn't any filth, and there wasn't any odor, and there wasn't any groaning, just the light white laughter of little girls in me. And there wasn't any long funny Velma look afterward. No look that makes you feel dirty afterward, that makes you want to die. With the little girls it is clean, all good and friendly. You have to understand that, Lord. You said, "Suffer little children to come unto me, and harm them not." Did you forget? Did you forget about the children? Yes, you forgot. You let them go wanting, sit on the road shoulders, crying next to their dead mothers. I've seen them charred, lame, halt. You forgot, Lord. You forgot how and when to be God. That's why I changed the little black girl's eyes for her, and I didn't touch her. Not a finger did I lay on her. But I gave her those blue eyes she wanted, not for pleasure and not for money. I did what you did not, could not, would not do. I looked at that ugly little black girl, and I loved her. I played you, and it was a very good show. I have caused a miracle. I gave her the eyes. I gave her the two blue eyes, cobalt blue, a streak of it right out of your own blue heaven. No one else will see her blue eyes, but she will, and she will live happily ever after. I have found it meet and right to do so. Now you are jealous of me. You see, I too have created, not aboriginally like you, but creation is a heady wine, more for the taster than the brewer. Having therefore imbibed, as it were, of the nectar that I am not afraid of you, of death, not even of life, and perhaps it's all right about Velma, and it's all right about Papa, and it's all right about the greater and the lesser Antilles. Quite all right, quite. With kindest regards, I remain yours, Elihu Micah Whitcomb. Soaphead Church folded the sheets of paper into 3 equal parts and slipped them into an envelope. Although he had no seal, he longed for sealing wax. He removed the cigar box from under the bed and rummaged about in it. There were some of his most precious things: a silver jade that had dislodged from a cuff link at the Chicago hotel, a gold pendant shaped like a Y with a piece of coral attached to it that had belonged to the mother he never knew, the 4 large hairpins that Velma had left on a rim of the bathroom sink, a powder blue gross grain ribbon from the head of a little girl named Precious Jewel, a blackened faucet head from a sink in a jail cell in Cincinnati, 2 marbles that he had found under the bench in Morningside Park on a very fine spring day, an old Lucky Heart catalog that smelled still of nut brown and mocha face powder, and lemon vanishing cream. Distracted by his things, he forgot what he had been looking for. The effort to recall was too great. There was a buzzing in his head, and a wash of fatigue overcame him. He closed his box and eased himself out of the bed, and slipped into an ivory sleep from which he could not hear the tiny yelps of an old lady who had come out of her candy store and found the still carcass of an old dog named Bob.